Roger.
Hi, Jake.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. You're most famous for being an early investor in Bitcoin, Bitcoin related startups, and for promoting it since it's some of its earliest days. I want to start actually earlier than that. If you don't mind, let's go back to August 2nd, 2002. It's a Friday, and you're headed to federal prison. Can you tell the story of how you got there and what your first few weeks in jail were like?
Yeah. I was not expecting the interview to start off that way, and so a bit of a wave of emotion came over me because that was definitely one of the harder days of my entire life there. A real good friend of mine at the time was nice enough to drive me down there to self-surrender at the prison. My attorney and the U.S. judge and the prosecuting attorney, everybody told me I'd be going to a federal prison camp, and they said it'd be just like going to summer camp, only everybody will be older and you'll be there with a bunch of doctors, lawyers, and drug dealers. And boy, did that not turn out to be the case. So the background of how I wound up there, there were a lot of moving pieces involved, but basically I had been selling a firecracker on eBay back when eBay had a guns and ammo section and people could sell, AR-15s and AK-47s and everything else on eBay. And there were dozens of other resellers selling this exact same product on eBay. And it wouldn't have been any sort of problem at all for me to have sold that product if I hadn't mixed that with also running for California State Assembly as a libertarian. And in the political campaign, in the debates with the Republican and the Democratic candidates, I called the ATF and FBI a bunch of jackbooted thugs and murderers in reference to all the kids they burnt to death in Waco, Texas, and a bunch of other things that they've done throughout history. And so I wound up being the only person in the entire country to be prosecuted for selling those firecrackers. And even, on that August 2nd Friday in 2002, while I was, showing up at the federal prison to start my prison sentence, even on that very day, the company that I had been buying the firecrackers from were still selling the exact same firecrackers without a license. The manufacturer of those firecrackers were still manufacturing those same firecrackers without a license. And all that wound up happening later is that these other, businesses that were involved in selling the exact same product without a license, they were basically just told to stop selling them. None of them even had to pay a fine, I don't think, and none of them certainly did any sort of jail time. And so when I showed up at what I thought was going to be the prison camp, it turned out that all the judge and the prosecutor and everybody else they were all completely wrong about that. They don't have any say whatsoever as to what security level prison I go to. The Bureau of Prisons gets to decide that. And because my actual charge that I had pled guilty to was dealing in explosives without a license, and again, the crime isn't dealing the explosives, it's doing it without a license. If you have a license, suddenly everything's fine in regards to that. But anything that has to do with explosives anyway, they automatically consider it to be a violent felony. So not only was I a felon, or not only am I a felon, I'm a violent felon as well. So they wound up sending me to a medium security facility there. But for the first couple of days, while they were deciding to exactly what security level I would be in, they sent me directly to the hole, or the jail within the jail, or the SHU, which stands for Special Housing Unit. And I'd never been to prison before. I had no idea what to expect. But in the hole, you're only allowed out of the cell 1 hour per day, and only on weekdays. And so I showed up on a Friday, and they locked me in this little cell with there were 6 people total, me and 5 other guys, in a little tiny room, just barely big enough for 3 bunk beds, and a little toilet with zero privacy whatsoever. There's no, it's not in a stall or anything. It's just right there in the side of the room with everybody, with you and 5 other guys. And the whole thing was just such a wild experience. I'm sorry for being a little bit of a loss for words, because I don't think about it so often nowadays, and it just so many memories from the guys there. Anyhow, on Friday I showed up, midday or whatever. They got me checked into there, and then so I was there all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. You don't get out at all. And anytime other inmate is going in or out of the room, there's a little slot on the door, and they open the slot on the door, and everybody has to put their hands behind their back and slide their arms out through the slot in the door, and they handcuff every single person in the room before they open or close the door at all. And then 3 times a day, they slide little trays of food through the slot in the door for everybody to eat. Then when you're done eating, you slide the trays back out through the door and through the slot in the door. And the door itself never, ever opens. Monday was, I guess, was Memorial Day or some national holiday. And so Monday, I was there all day as well. So all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, all day Monday. Didn't get out even once. Tuesday, for the first time ever, I was let out for an hour to go into a little, I don't know, maybe 6 foot by 6 foot or 8 foot by 8 foot in caged area outdoors, but at least you get a little bit of fresh air. And I left out the part about the room that they had us all in there too. There was so little ventilation and it was so hot in there that everybody just strips down to their underwear and just lays on their bunk the entire time because it's too hot to move around. It's, too humid from, everybody's breath in this room with like almost zero ventilation whatsoever. It was really uncomfortable the entire time. So Tuesday I got out for an hour to get a little bit of fresh air. Wednesday, I think I got out for an hour again, and then it was probably Thursday. It was either Wednesday or Thursday where they finally classified me and let me out into general population. But up till that point, I didn't know what to expect. I thought the entire 10 months was going to be like that. I had no idea what this was all about, but I sure knew that prison was a heck of a lot different than the way my attorney and the U.S. prosecutor and the judge described it to me. It certainly wasn't like any summer camp I had ever been to as a kid, because I sure loved summer camp, and I can tell you right now, I did not love prison one bit. But I guess to conclude this little part of the story, though, like I didn't love prison one bit, but the day I left prison, I told my cellmates at the time, I told them I'm glad to be going, but I'm sad to be saying goodbye as well. And it was bittersweet there too, because if I had to guess, I'd say probably somewhere in the ballpark of around 75-ish%, 80, maybe even 80% of the people that were in the prison with me there were there for victimless crimes. The vast majority, buying, selling, or using drugs of some sort, and then some other victimless crimes there as well. A lot of people don't know this. People that wind up listening to this podcast may already know who Peter Schiff is. A real prolific, libertarian-leaning, Twitter account and podcast host or radio host. His father died in federal prison. The United States government locked his father in jail until the very day he died, and he died maybe two or 3 years ago now in federal prison. And there were a number of people there as well that were in there for various quote unquote tax crimes. And some of them were really old too, and some of them I imagine probably died there as well. It was just really, really sad to see that when the government has a money printing machine and they can print as much money at any time for any reason, yet they're still locking people in jail until they die for not, having, basically kneeled down and kissed the ring of the government and shown their obedience by filing their tax returns exactly perfectly. The government's willing to lock these people in a cage until they die, and it's a sad state of affairs in the world, which that sort of thing goes on, and people are busy with their lives and don't do anything to stop it. And there's just a lot of really sick, evil, twisted people in government. And then there's a lot of people in government that just think they're doing the right thing and they don't understand economics enough to realize that they're retarding the entire world's rate of economic progress by being involved there. And so I guess there isn't any magic bullet, but I'd love to see more people study economics. A great place to get started is a book called Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, and it'll really change the way you view the world, and you'll be able to see the world more clearly. And so if there's one thing I can ask of people, go and pick up that book or any other economics books by Henry Hazlitt or Adam Smith or Murray Rothbard or Ludwig von Mises. All of them are fantastic. But if you're not sure where to start, Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt's a great one.
I'll go check out that book. I appreciate you sharing your story with this initial question. I understand it probably brings up a lot of emotions. I think it's also kind of important for people to see this human side of you, though, where a lot of people, especially who are super passionate about Bitcoin but no other cryptocurrencies, they've kind of turned their back on you as one of the earliest Bitcoin promoters and most important ones, who now favors a different coin, Bitcoin Cash, which we'll get to later. But some of these people can be pretty nasty and talk about you as a bad guy. But from all I can tell, you're a really good guy, an honest person, and have feelings just like the rest of us, and just are trying to as best as you can tell how to do it, make the world and make a contribution to making the world a better place. So I think that's great for a lot of people to hear. After you got out of prison, you moved to Japan, is that right?
Yeah, so I actually had 3 years of federal probation to deal with, and just the lies and insults and belligerence from the U.S. probation office was just really, if I hadn't seen it firsthand, it would be unbelievable. So one example of that is I had my business, Memory Dealers, was going really well, and I was working really hard and employing a number of people and busy with all of that. And they wanted to come and inspect where I'm living. And like, okay, I'm on probation. You guys can come and inspect where I'm living. And especially when I first got out, I was staying with a real good friend of mine, a Korean guy. And especially in Asian cultures, it's a really big deal. You don't wear your shoes in the house. You take your shoes off the door before you come in the house. And so for the first week or two when I got out, I was, stayed with him. And they showed up to his house and like they wanted to inspect it. And he's like, okay, you can come in and inspect. And he knew that was going to happen when he agreed to let me stay with him for a bit there. But he said, can you take your shoes off? And they're like, no, we're going to keep our shoes on. And he was, everybody was annoyed with that. But then that was just one sign of disrespect. But then maybe, I don't know, 6 months or a year later, I managed to buy a house. And it was my first house that I bought, actually, but it was a really gorgeous house with beautiful white, like light beige carpet. And again, when they showed up at my house to inspect my house, and I had just bought it, and it was the most expensive thing I'd ever bought in my life up to that point. And they said they wanted to come in and inspect my house. And I said, okay, you can come in, but please take your shoes off. And they said, no, we're going to keep our shoes on. And I said, well, you can come in and inspect my house, but I need you to take your shoes off before you come in. And the guy's name was, Jose Martinez. And I remember very clearly, he looked at me and said, we're going to come in your house with our shoes on, or you're going to go back to jail. And it just, here I am 20 years later, and it still just bothers me that, horrible attitude of this guy. So, that wasn't a very fun choice that I got to make. So it's like, I had to bow down and kiss the ring, and he walked all over the inside of my beautiful house with my beautiful, light colored carpet with his dirty shoes on from outside. And he was just a real belligerent jerk the entire way through. So if he ever winds up hearing this, I hope he knows that to this very day, I remember what a jerk he is. And if you want to apologize to me, Joe, now's your chance. You can email me, roger@bitcoin.com. You should apologize to me and all the other people you were so belligerent to. People can change. It's rare that they do, but I hope you did change, Joe, and I hope you start treating people with more respect and more dignity that they deserve.
So after that, probation in the US for a while, and then you split?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The question was, how did I wind up in Japan?
I appreciate all the this getting sidetracked is the best part usually. So
yeah, so I had 3 years of federal probation, and so the day I was allowed to leave the country was the day I finally left the country to Japan. So it was I think 2 years and 11 months into my probation, because eventually I had to file all sorts of, had to hire a lawyer and file all sorts of forms with the court to be able to be allowed to travel while I was on the 3 years of probation there. And then the stipulation there is that I couldn't leave. I had to check in at least once every 30 days. So I think when I had 29 days left on probation, I left. And I haven't lived in the U.S. Ever since. Japan turned out to be a really wonderful place, filled with interesting people and interesting technologies. And I now speak fluent Japanese. Although we're recording this, as we're recording this, I'm in the Caribbean at the moment, which is also a very interesting place, but totally different from Japan, and very different from the U.S. as well. But yeah, life goes on, and it's a big world out there. And I think people, if you haven't traveled, you don't realize just how many people there are out there in the world with different wants and desires and needs. And I think it was Mark Twain who said, the best cure for racism is to travel. And I think that's so true. When you go around the world, you realize that there's all sorts of people all around the world with very similar wants and desires and needs. And I've been really fortunate in the fact that I've been able to travel just about all over the world and gotten to meet so many different interesting people because of it. And I recommend anybody, if they have the chance, go out there and see the world, because there's more than just your town or just your city or just your state or just your country. There's a whole big world out there. And props to Elon Musk for wanting to go off the earth to find out even more stuff out there. So yeah, explore as much as you can in life.
I totally agree. I was fortunate to travel for a few months earlier this year and spent a few weeks with a buddy in Japan, and that was my first time in Asia, and thought it was an awesome country. Um, where else have you lived or traveled that has surprised you in a positive way, or that what highlights do you think about when you think about where you've gone and where you've lived?
And Japan just feels like going to a different planet because everything is just so different there. Another place I really enjoyed actually were my visits to Germany. And I, driven on the Autobahn a number of times, and that was a really fun, interesting experience. And one of the times I rented a Mustang GT, and it would top out at about 140 miles an hour. And then there were still people in like even faster cars that would come past me, and it was really incredible to see that happen. And it was really interesting to see just how much care and precision people on the Autobahn drive, though they stay the heck out of the way of the faster cars on the Autobahn. It was really neat to see that in action, and I enjoyed that. And I've enjoyed my time in most places I've gone in the world. But I think probably Japan and Korea are two of my favorite places to visit as well. Both of them I just find really, I really enjoy the food and the environment as a whole. They're both really, really enjoyable to me.
Great. So I want to fast forward now to 2010, 2011, I think, when you discovered Bitcoin for the first time. Just to set the stage for that a little bit, you weren't just some guy who came across Bitcoin and started investing. You were a fairly accomplished business person up until that point through, you mentioned earlier, the computer parts company that you worked that you created. What was it? Memory Dealers. I think
Right.
You dropped out of college to start that.
Yeah, so I started it while I was in school, and while I was in school, it just took off in terms of just people all over the world wanting to buy the parts from me at a price where I could make money. So it became very clear that continuing at college wasn't going to be the best use of my time. So I just started focusing on the business full time. But I had read all these economics books and then science fiction books, and we had the internet that allowed people to communicate anywhere in the world, but we didn't have an uncensorable payment network that allowed people to pay with anybody anywhere in the world. And when Bitcoin came along, it felt like, oh, fantastic, this thing I've been waiting for all my life finally just came into existence. Now I need to pivot everything into promoting this. And so the first step was to buy some Bitcoin, and the next step was to start investing in all the different businesses there. And I was, by head and shoulders above anybody else that had been involved at that point. I had more assets available to help promote these things. So I started paying for radio ads on more than 100 radio stations across the entire United States back in 2011, promoting Bitcoin. I paid for a big billboard on the side of one of the busiest expressways in all of Silicon Valley, advertising Bitcoin back in 2011, and it got worldwide media attention when we put up that billboard. I literally had newspapers and media from all over the world contacting me. I remember from as far away as Germany, they were contacting me asking, why did you spend your money to put up this billboard promoting Bitcoin? And it was really a fantastic way to help spread awareness and adoption. And I started basically telling all the companies that I was buying products from on a regular basis, I said, hey, you need to start letting me pay you in Bitcoin. Otherwise, I'm going to try and find a different vendor. And so I managed to get lots of these factories in China that I had been dealing with to let me start paying them in Bitcoin. And then I helped set up the Silicon Valley Bitcoin meetup group and get that started. And then I held the very first meetup group in China ever as well. I think that was in 2012 in Shenzhen. And I invited all the company owners and all the different business people that I knew in China from my previous career to that meetup in Shenzhen. And we had quite a few people showed up, and some of them became really interesting. In fact, a few years later, one of the guys that his English was one of the weakest, but he showed up at that meeting because I had bought lots of stuff from him over the years. And he sent me an email a few years later saying, Roger, thank you so much. You're I think he called me his Bitcoin spirit guide. And I thought that was a funny nickname. And he went on to become one of the biggest, and I don't know what he's up to recently. I haven't talked to him, but at the time he sent me that email, which was probably 2014, 2015, he was one of the biggest cryptocurrency miners in all of China. And so he had built this really big mining facility as well. So it was really interesting. You never know these little seeds that you plant, what they're going to grow up into. And so somewhere along the line, people started calling me Bitcoin Jesus, but I kind of feel like Bitcoin Johnny Appleseed would have been a more appropriate nickname, because I feel like I planted all these different seeds all over the world, and everybody I met, everywhere would get some free Bitcoin from me. And all these, different things around the world kind of grew up around that at this point. And a lot of people, I think, are confused. They think that I left Bitcoin. I never left Bitcoin. The thing that everybody's calling Bitcoin today left me. I'm still promoting the exact same vision of Bitcoin that I got involved with, early on, and that I was so excited about, and that's peer-to-peer permissionless cash for the entire world. And the BTC version of Bitcoin no longer works for that. Bitcoin Cash and a number of others do. And I'm not at all a Bitcoin maximalist. I remember in the early days, or a Bitcoin Cash maximalist either. In the early days, people would always ask me, well, what if something better than Bitcoin comes along? What are you going to do? And I tell them, I hope something better than Bitcoin comes along, because then we'll all get to use that, and we'll have something even better than Bitcoin. And sure enough, something better than what people are calling Bitcoin today came along, and it's called Bitcoin Cash. But if and when something even better than Bitcoin Cash comes along in the future, I'll be super eager to support that and promote that to the world as well. So I want to promote the things that are the most useful to bring the most economic freedom to the most number of people around the world, where they don't need permission from any bank or politician or any government agent at all, because that's what makes the world a better place. And a bunch of people being rude to each other on Twitter because you like your one coin more than the coin that that person happens to have in their wallet. They think they're going to get rich over. That doesn't make the world a better place. That just makes the world a less pleasant, or it's at the very least it makes Twitter a less pleasant place to be on. So yeah, just go and think for yourself and use the things that are useful. And name calling, that's not an argument. So don't worry about people that are on their crypto Twitter, insulting people. Just go out there and look at you and your life and figure out what's useful for you.
So whether we call you Bitcoin Jesus or Bitcoin Johnny Appleseed, I think you said, that's my first time hearing that one. But either way, you were an extremely effective promoter of Bitcoin since the early days, like we talked about, and now you're promoting Bitcoin Cash, which you believe follows the original purpose and intent of Bitcoin as it was created. But rewinding back to 6-7 years ago, where you first found Bitcoin and were promoting it in its early days, what are you telling the taxi driver or a grandmother who wants to invest her life savings or allocate some of it to Bitcoin? Obviously, you got a lot of people on board. Would love to hear. For people today, this isn't a crypto exclusive podcast. I had Vitalik on, and I'm having you on, and I hope to have many more leading voices in the space, because I'm really fascinated with it. But not everyone listening even knows what Bitcoin is. They might have heard the name, so would love to hear your explanation of what that is.
Yeah, so the speech that I've been giving about that for about 10 years now is that, and the speech used to be about Bitcoin. Today it's about Bitcoin Cash, because it's no longer true about Bitcoin, but it was that it allows you to send or receive any amount of money with anyone, anywhere in the world, instantly, basically for free, and there's nothing that anybody can do to stop it. No one can block your account. No one can freeze your account. Nobody can control it in any way. And because there's this limited supply of these Bitcoin Cash, as more and more people start to use it, the price of Bitcoin Cash in terms of the dollar will go up over time. And if it becomes really, really, really popular, each $1 Bitcoin Cash that you have today could become worth as much as $1,000 in the future. It could go up 1,000 times from where it is today. So if you buy $100 today, it could become worth $100,000 in the future. So you'll wind up making money and using the tools that enable more economic freedom for the entire world. And more economic freedom leads to more economic growth. More economic growth leads to a higher standard of living for everybody, and a higher standard of living for everybody is what, is the best tool we have to measure the well-being of people around the world. So it makes the world a better place for everybody. And so that's the general pitch that I've been giving for 10 years now. And it's still what has me so excited about it. Let's build the tools to enable people to have more control of their own money, so that we can create more economic growth and raise everybody up out of poverty, and give everybody a higher standard of living around the world.
So at the end, you talked about how, Bitcoin or now Bitcoin Cash creates more economic freedom, which leads to more economic growth, which alleviates poverty worldwide, helps accelerate advancements for humankind. Can we talk about kind of practical examples of how that can take shape for, both poor people around the world and also at the high end on tech advancements? I understand you're interested in things such as like the singularity, the famous book by Ray Kurzweil. Can we talk about how on the one hand, peer-to-peer electronic cash globally can help alleviate poverty, and on the other, how it can help accelerate technology?
Yeah, and those two are the same thing. So accelerating technology is what relieves global poverty. So the more technology and the more automation we can have in the world, the less poverty there will be. So, for example, if you just have a fishing rod, you can catch one fish at a time. And a fishing rod, maybe has $50 worth of capital in it. But if you can build a fishing net, maybe a fishing net, has $500 or $5,000 worth of capital in it, but you can catch hundreds of fish at a time. And so the amount of time and effort and resources per person to catch a fish goes down. And so you'll have a lot more fish to go around if you have the capital goods or the better fishing technology in the form of a fishing net rather than a fishing rod. You'll be able to feed more people. And so the same is true of absolutely everything, whether it's agriculture or fishing or computers or transportation or anything and everything. The more automation we can have and the better the technology for that, the more time and effort and resources there will be available for everything else to happen there. So if everybody's busy standing in line at the bank every day to do their wire transfers or receive their payments or whatever, that's time those people aren't able to spend fishing or farming or building cars or building websites or building things that people actually need. So if we can make the entire world's economic system more efficient, where people don't have to spend an hour to do a wire transfer, or they don't have to beg politicians for permission to be able to even send that wire transfer, or don't have to spend hours and hours, at a bank begging them to even open an account for you. All that time and human energy and human effort is now able to be used for things, whether it's those people spending more time with their family or building houses for people to live in or growing food for people to eat. But whatever it is that people spend that time with, it instead will be time that people can use to make the world a better place, right? Whether I'm sure everybody would rather spend that time with their family or having more food to eat than standing in line at a government jobs office, asking for an employer permission or a work permit or something like that. And even today, it's so crazy. If you don't have the right passport, then you have to get permission to work in a certain country, or you have to get permission from other people who you've never met to hire somebody who they've never met. Like, it's just really, really crazy that all that still exists in the world. But cryptocurrencies that work as peer-to-peer cash basically give people a super, super easy way to opt out of all these, violent strangers that want to interject themselves into the lives of peaceful people and tell them what they can or can't do with their own money. So if we make it so incredibly easy for anybody to do what they want with their own money, everybody will be better off, whether it's, the rich tycoon in Silicon Valley or the subsistence farmer in sub-Saharan Africa. Both people are going to be better off if we have more free trade and more, economic freedom around the world. Everybody's better off. A rising tide raises all boats, and that's what it is with economic growth around the world. So if you look at it, even some poor person in a poor country still has a color TV and still has air conditioning, whereas 100 years ago those things didn't exist at all, even if you were the richest guy on the planet. And so that's an example of how the advancement of technology makes everybody's life better off, not just the rich people in first world countries.
On the subject of a better future, I understand you're invested, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, in Pronomos Capital, which focuses on, originally it was kind of seasteading and now city building. My last guest actually was Mark Lutter from the Charter Cities Institute. And I also understand you're interested in life extension. I've had Aubrey de Grey on the show and plan to have other people from that field as well. Would you care to speak about your interest and involvement in one of those spaces?
Yeah, and you're hitting on all the things that I'm interested in. So, of course, life extension is interesting. So, if you're dead, you can't do anything that's interesting at all, right? So, I want people to be able to live for as long as they want to be able to live, so they can do as many interesting, fun things or enjoyable things as they can for as long as they want. And my parents are in their 70s. I love my parents dearly. I want to spend lots more time with them and have lots more fun family, events and family time with them. And with the current state of technology in the world, they don't have a whole lot of extra time left. Whereas if we can build the technology that, Aubrey de Grey and others are working on, then yeah, great. I'll get to have decades and decades and hopefully centuries or millenniums more fun time with my friends and family and people that I care about in the world. And what could be better with that than that? So I've been spending a lot of the money that I earned in my involvement in cryptocurrency to now invest in different startups like that. So for example, there's a stem cell research and treatment facility that I've invested a bunch of money in as well. And then for those that are extra nerdy, you know what Alcor is. So that's a cryonic suspension company based out of Arizona. I signed up for them when I was like 20 years old there. And actually, back to the prison story a little bit. I thought it was so strange that while I was waiting to be sentenced and while the trial was going on, they didn't impose any travel restriction on me whatsoever. And the prosecuting attorney even said, "Oh, we don't feel Mr. Veer poses any flight risk whatsoever. We don't have any problem with him traveling whatsoever." And in hindsight, 20 years later, I realized what they were doing is they were trying to give me enough rope to hang myself with, because I was a giant flight risk. I was absolutely considering fleeing and not having, to put up with any of the, politically motivated selective prosecution nonsense that they were doing to me, just like they're, now doing to Julian Assange and Edward Snowden and Bradley Manning. Like, they obviously are having much worse times than I had with my 10 months, but it was still just felt incredibly unjust, and I wanted nothing to do with it. So one of the ideas that crossed my mind was, and suicide isn't the right word, but the idea was to, go into cryonic suspension early. And the idea is that, when they resuscitate me later on, maybe the United States government will have dissipated by then, and I'll have the last laugh because all those, the stupid prosecutor and judge and everybody else that was after me and the ATF agents, they'll all be dead, long dead and gone. And, I will have had enough foresight to have, beat them. And then I'll be living in this new amazing world that has all this new amazing technology. Ultimately, I decided that course of action was a little bit too risky, but it crossed my mind at the time there. So all this stuff is just incredibly fascinating to me. And you mentioned Ray Kurzweil's book, The Age of Spiritual Machines. I remember reading that, and at that point, I kind of lost all of my interest in electoral politics, because I don't think electoral politics are really the best technological path to improve the world. I think it's through actual technology where you can actually build the technological tools that empower individuals to have more control over their own lives and do these things to raise the standard of living of everybody all over the world. And so we kind of touched on a lot of topics there. Do you want to veer me back towards one specific area of that?
No, I mean, that was perfect. I think it was great to hear your thoughts across the spectrum. I guess one question I'd have is, you mentioned I'm kind of hitting all your interests, and it's not just like a coincidence. Like these are all my interests as well. And I think there's a lot of people, or at least a good number of people like us who, you find someone who's interested in crypto, and more so than the average person, they might be interested in life extension or charter cities or something along those lines. And the latter two are probably less popular than, almost everyone in the world knows what Bitcoin is today. I would say, whether they know what it is or not, they know the name. Fewer people are familiar with like the concept of seasteading. But what do you think it is about people like us who, what makes us, once you're interested in one, you're interested in the other? What's the common thread?
I'm not sure, but I think it has a lot to do with being a free thinker and not just thinking what you're told to think, but being able to think for yourself and look at the world that's out there and say, oh, well, everybody else is doing this. But maybe that's not the right way. Maybe I can do something different, or maybe I can take a different path in life. And if you're not willing to think outside the box, then you're not going to come across any interesting things, because I don't know. I know nothing about pop culture, but I saw something online recently. I guess Cardi B or somebody like that sings some song is having some fight with somebody else. Like, how is that interesting to anybody about anything? Like that, there's so many more interesting things happening in the world than people fighting about electoral politics over, what singer and what this and that. And I'm glad I don't know anything about that, because there's a limited amount of time each day, and you should spend your time on things that are actually interesting to you and fulfilling to you, and hopefully make the world a more useful, better place, a more enjoyable place for you. And don't just do things because everybody else tells you to. I'm sure, everybody told the Wright brothers, oh, heavier than, air objects can never fly. But anybody that wanted to stop and think for a minute, just look at a bird. A bird weighs more than air, and a bird flies all the time. So why wouldn't some other heavier than air object be able to fly? And I think the same is true for everything here. So like people have always grown old and died up until now, but why can't we come up with nanotechnology to move around the individual atoms one at a time to be able to keep people younger much, much longer? There's no technological reason that's not possible. We just need to figure out how to actually do it. And so anything you can possibly think of that you want out of life, don't just assume it's impossible because nobody's done it yet. Go and stop and think for yourself and say, hey, I want to be able to do this. How could it possibly be done? And then try and organize the people and the resources, or the technology, or the people that might have some know-how how to figure it out to get it done. And I think that's what we're seeing happen with the adoption of cryptocurrencies around the world. People are building the tools to make it easy for people to use. And that's what we're seeing with the SINS Foundation and others working on these life extension issues. And then AI, of course, right? I forget who said it, but it might have been Ray Kurzweil or somebody else, but it really had a big impact on me. And I'm not sure if the quote is correct, but I've been pondering it for a year or three now. And the idea was that our only problem that we have to focus on is to create something more intelligent than ourselves, so AI. And any problems after that aren't ours to solve. And I think that's kind of an interesting way of looking at the world, right? So if you create a superhuman intelligence, that superhuman intelligence is going to solve all the other problems after that, because we'll be lucky if we get to keep up. And I like Ray Kurzweil's optimism that hopefully we'll get to merge with the machines and become cyborgs and keep up with AI. And that would be my ideal scenario. But sometimes things don't always turn out how you want it to turn out. But there's no turning back, right? Even if technology progresses at an absolute snail's pace, eventually it's going to get there. And from my point of view, I want to see it come sooner rather than later, because I remember in every area of my life, but specifically when I was in college, it was just so fun getting to hang out with other really smart people. Because when you're hanging out with other really smart people, there's so many really smart conversations and new ideas and new thoughts that you get exposed to. And so right now we get to do that with other humans. Well, wait till we get to do that with superhuman intelligences, right? If you think hanging out with smart people is fun, wait till you get to hang out with smart, superhuman intelligences. It's going to be even more interesting, even more fun. And I can't wait to be able to do that. So I look forward to, using more of the money that I managed to earn through cryptocurrency to help, fund these things that will make the world a more interesting and better place for everybody. And I guess it's worth pointing out too, when there's really, really smart people out there in the world that do interesting things, the rest of us get to benefit from it too, right? So the people that invented the airplane and the transistor and everything else out there, the entire world gets to benefit from those inventions. And so it's a great thing. And so wait till we have superhuman intelligences that get to invent new things. Well, all of us mere humans are going to get to benefit from those inventions as well.
I think that's a great perspective, and I agree with the sentiment of all of it. You started off by saying, I don't know, but it sounds like you have a pretty good, whether you knew it or not necessarily, a pretty good, conceptualization of what's driving people in this direction. And I think you mentioned free thinkers as one aspect of it, and independent thinkers. I also think an aspect of it is, you talked about having high expectations and high hopes for the future of humanity. I think people like you and I may be more willing than the average person to consider the idea that anything is possible, and that we could live well past 150 years old and have a better form of governance and all these great technologies and automations that enable people to have better lives around the world. Some people might be hesitant to let themselves see that as possible because if we don't get there, or if you die in a car crash in a couple of weeks, that would be immediate. But if you go your whole life and kind of grow old and die, and all of this stuff doesn't happen, or some of this stuff doesn't happen, could be pretty disappointing. But the way I see it, we only get to live once, and you might as well make of it what you can and dream big, right?
Yeah, and for those that want an insurance plan, go and check out alcor.org, and you can sign up for chronic suspension. It's actually really reasonably priced because you can buy it through an insurance policy. And I'm the one who got them to start accepting Bitcoin for their payments back in, I don't know, 2012 or 2013. And then more recently, I got them to start accepting Bitcoin Cash. So you can pay in either of those over at Alcor as well. So there's a quick plug for Alcor. And I knew the Bitcoin community was really, in the early days, my home, group of like-minded thinkers. When Hal Finney, the first person in the world to ever make a Bitcoin transaction other than Satoshi, when it turned out that he was also signed up for Alcor as well, the exact same thing that I had been signed up for since I was a young man as well. So it's and you can pay with cryptocurrency. So I invite anybody that's listening, go and check that out. It's a really I think worthwhile insurance policy if we don't have extreme life extension before the end of your natural human lifespan. That can be a good backup plan. And it's obviously it's not guaranteed, but if the chance is above zero, it seems worth taking that chance that they'll be able to revive you later.
So just to be super clear for people not familiar, can you just explain what Alcor is and does?
Yeah, sorry, I jumped to conclusions thinking that people would know. So the idea behind Alcor is like, okay, when you die of a heart attack or a stroke or cancer or whatever, your body is still there, your mind is still there. Like your body just doesn't function quite well enough to stay alive. But if you let your body sit out in the sun for a couple of days or bury it in the ground, within a couple of days or weeks or months, there's going to be basically nothing left of you whatsoever, and you're not going to be able to really. There won't be anything left. And so the idea is that Alcor is right as soon as you die, they put your entire body or just your head, depending on which option you opt for. They'll put it in a great big giant vat of liquid nitrogen, and that will preserve your body for decades or hopefully centuries there. And the idea is that as technology gets better and better and better, eventually technology will progress enough where they'll be able to have little tiny, robots will be able to go into your body and move around individual molecules one at a time and fix the cancer or fix the damage from the stroke or the heart attack or whatever it was that caused you to die, and be able to fix all the damage that was caused by the freezing process, right? Because ice crystals can form and pop cell membranes and all sorts of other issues are caused by the freezing process as well. But once the technology exists where they can move around these individual molecules there, and repair all the damage from whatever you died from, plus the freezing process, the idea is they'll be able to resuscitate you and wake you back up, and you'll be ready for a round two of life, and hopefully, rejoin your friends and family and loved ones and people that you care about, and get to tell the world about what your whole experience was like. You'll probably be a bit of a celebrity because there'll probably only be a few hundred or at most a few tens of thousands of people that would ever be resuscitated in that way. So people will want to say, hey, what was it really like? You really remember when the iPhone 1 came out? I'm sure they'll be, have brain implants by then, and like people will hardly even know what a cell phone is in that future. Just like most kids today will have no idea what a record player is, but you'll be able to tell people about the past, and you'll get to learn about the future. So what an interesting. It's the closest thing to having a time machine, to be able to go into the future and see all the cool stuff that people come up with in the future. And all the people in the future, of course, will want to know about what your life was like in the past as well. So Alcor exists today. And, even from when I was a young teenager, like maybe 12, 13, 14, I knew, of course, I'm going to sign up for something like that to do that. And then when I found out that Alcor already existed and there was a real company doing that, within 48 hours of me finding out about Alcor, I flew out there. They gave me a whole tour of their facility. I got to go in the actual, kind of big warehouse type room where they have the big giant vats with actual people being stored. And I don't think they give people tours of that area anymore, but this was back in 1999, 98, 2000 maybe, probably 99, I would guess. And then another kind of fun connection with that too, I then started going to the Alcor meetup groups in Silicon Valley where all the other people that were interested in cryonic suspension would show up. And one of the people that I met there is, I was probably 18, 19, I don't think I was even 20 years old yet, was a man named Ralph Merkel. And Ralph Merkel was, significantly older than me at the time, but he was very nice to me. And I had some long conversations with him, and he, talked about all sorts of interesting things from him with me. And I was very glad to be able to learn from him. And a lot of people might recognize that last name, Ralph Merkel. So it's the same Merkle as the Merkle trees that are used in Bitcoin software itself. So he's actually one of the guys that came up with a real important piece of the mathematics that was used to create Bitcoin later on. So it's kind of interesting how all these different pieces of the puzzle plug back together. And if I can touch on one other piece of the puzzle that circles back together. Also around that time, let's see, this probably would have been around the year 2000 also, I went to an artificial intelligence conference that was in Silicon Valley. And David Friedman was there, who is, the son of Milton Friedman, who's a really interesting author who wrote another fantastic book called Future Imperfect that I actually credit quite a bit for what got me excited about peer-to-peer cash in the future and Bitcoin eventually. But he was there, and that was interesting. But I met another guy there as well. And after talking to him for a bit, it was pretty clear that he was a pretty ardent libertarian, but he also said he was working at the NSA. And that seemed really confusing to me. And this was before the Snowden revelation, where everybody, knew for sure that the NSA was spying on people. But even back then, people in my circles kind of knew that the NSA was busy spying on people and not really up to good things. And so I asked him, I said, if you're such a libertarian, why are you working at the NSA? And he got this twinkle in his eyes, and he, rubbed his hands together, and he said it was because they have me working on the most subversive things imaginable. And I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. And then life went on. And then, let's see if that was the year 2000. So about a decade later, maybe 12 years later, and a long, long time later, I was at a Bitcoin meetup there in Silicon Valley. And I was talking with one of the people there. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went off in my mind. I said, wait a minute, I know you. I met you at that artificial intelligence conference. You used to work for the NSA, and now you're here interested in crypto. I said, yeah, that probably would have been me. And that person was David Schwartz, the CTO of Ripple, and basically the guy that coded up all of Ripple. So it's just really interesting how I was bumping into these people a decade before cryptocurrencies even came into existence there in Silicon Valley. And so I guess I was real fortunate to be able to be there and run in those circles and be involved at that time. And here we are today now, building the tools to change the world.
There's another couple examples of these communities kind of crossing and overlapping with each other. It's really interesting to hear, and I'm sure by hanging around with both of them since some of the earliest days, you've met a lot of interesting people, like you've talked about, and had a lot of really smart conversations. So going back, I do want to cover Bitcoin Cash a bit, because that's kind of your main priority today, and all of this is like super interesting, so it's hard to divert away from it. But when you promoted Bitcoin in the early days, believed in it very strongly, and then believed that the original Bitcoin was more so what became Bitcoin Cash than what Bitcoin, the legacy Bitcoin, what people call Bitcoin today, you believe was less of the original intention. Can you talk just a little bit about what changed?
Yeah, and what people call Bitcoin today has almost nothing to do with and you can read it right in the title of the original Bitcoin white paper that was put out by Satoshi Nakamoto. It's called Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. But what they're trying to build with Bitcoin today is this settlement layer for banks and custodial institutions. And great if you want to build that, but it's disappointing that they managed to hijack the Bitcoin project in order to do that. And so I lived through all this. So in 13, 14, 15, 16, and into 2017, it was amazing the adoption around the world that Bitcoin was having, where businesses like Microsoft and Dell Computer and Expedia were all starting to accept Bitcoin for payments. And then myself and people like Gavin Andreessen, who's the person that Satoshi turned the project over to when he left, and a bunch of others were saying, hey, eventually the blocks are going to become full, and we're going to need to have more room for people to make transactions in the blocks before these other technologies to scale on top of it with layer 2 solutions are ready. We need to make some more room for people to continue to use Bitcoin now. And there was this giant civil war that went on within Bitcoin. And the part that really, initially I was kind of quiet and just wanted to listen and hear both sides of the argument there. And when I saw one side of the argument that wanted the blocks to stay small, and their main argument there is that the blocks have to stay small so people can continue to run full nodes on inexpensive computers with slowish internet connections. And it's like, okay, and you want a bunch of nodes around the world so that governments can't turn off all the nodes. And like, okay, I was somewhat sympathetic to that argument. But then the other argument there is that Bitcoin needs to scale to be money for the entire world, and everybody needs to use it. You don't necessarily need everybody to be able to run a full node. You can just have people using SPV wallets that connect to the network there. And I was studying both sides and learning. And then when I saw the side that was in favor of limiting the block size, do absolutely everything they could to delete posts and ban people and basically censor one side of the argument from being able to state their case, well, that was all the argument I needed to know. If one side is supporting free speech and the other is actively engaging in censorship, I'm going to come down on the side of free speech every single time. And that's exactly what happened, and that's what motivated me to speak up in favor of being able to scale on-chain, because strong arguments don't require censorship to win out. And that's exactly what wound up happening within Bitcoin. They used all the sorts of censorship and basically morphed the entire goal of the project and took it from when the vast majority of the project were big blockers that wanted Bitcoin to scale to be money for the world. The most intolerant minority there censored all of them, kicked them out because they managed to have get control of the main discussion platforms, and basically started banning anybody that wanted Bitcoin to actually be peer-to-peer cash for the world, and attacking them in every which way they possibly could. Not just attacking their ideas, but attacking them personally. And you'll see all these people today, they'll say, oh, convicted felon Roger Ver. Like, okay, I'm a convicted felon, but that has absolutely no bearing on my arguments whatsoever as to whether increasing the block size is a good or bad idea for Bitcoin. Yet that's one of their main ways they love to attack me, is convicted felon Roger Ver. And name calling is not an argument, and that's about all they have there. And so I invite anybody, if you're a free thinker, think freely about this, right? And even if you don't want to dive into all the exact details, just know one side has been busy engaging as much censorship as they possibly can, and the other side to this very day supports all sorts of free speech. For me, I think that kind of shows you which side has the stronger arguments. It's the side supporting free speech. And so where are we at today? There's several thousand cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin lost its first mover advantage. The entire world knows the name Bitcoin, but if they go and try and use it, it's not going to be the thing that was described in the original white paper, and it's not going to be the thing that has the same user experience that made Bitcoin popular to begin with. It would be embarrassing for me to try to promote Bitcoin today. I'd have to tell people, rather than saying, hey, fast, cheap, reliable transactions for the entire world, I'd have to tell people, oh, you can buy this expensive thing that'll cost you about $5 each time you want to use it. Maybe your transaction will go through in a couple hours. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks. And in that time, people could potentially reverse the transaction anyhow. And maybe it'll get dropped from the mempool altogether, so your transaction won't ever go through. But it's really cool because it's called Bitcoin, and all these other people are excited about it on social media. Like, that's not something in good conscience I can promote. Whereas with Bitcoin Cash, I can tell people, hey, fast, cheap, reliable transactions. And I can say that about a lot of other things out there. Like Monero is awesome, Zcash is awesome, Dash is awesome. There's a lot of really awesome platforms out there that work really, really well. The downside is they don't have the brand recognition or same network effect that Bitcoin has. And so will the good user experience win out in the end, or will the brand recognition of Bitcoin win out? I don't know, but my money's on the good user experience, because I'm old enough to remember Friendster, and then Friendster started having a bad user experience, and everybody jumped to MySpace, and then MySpace started having a bad user experience, and everybody jumped to Facebook. And I guarantee you, if Facebook starts giving a bad user experience, people will jump to something else as well. So I think the same will be true of cryptocurrencies as well. If something gives a bad user experience, people are going to move to something else.
You mentioned the kind of two factors, one being which Bitcoin has the advantage in is the network effect and brand recognition today, at least. And then the other, Bitcoin Cash has the advantage, which is the user experience, the quick, reliable, cheap, feeless or small fee payments. And you said, your money is on the latter winning out in the long run, even though Bitcoin has the advantage now in terms of market cap and, the number of people that own it. Bitcoin Cash, because of its superior user experience and because it accomplishes the goal that you believed in from the start, that a lot of people have joined the crypto community because they believe in, you said your money's on that, but literally your money is not just on that. Literally, I understand your money is across, allocated across the crypto universe. You have some money left in Bitcoin. You have a lot of money in Bitcoin Cash. And then you have money on all these other coins that you mentioned, Zcash and Monero, and all of those, because as far as I understand, you're just a reasonable investor who knows that, part of what you don't know, and you don't know how the future is going to unfold. You have certain thoughts and things that you believe in, where you're promoting Bitcoin Cash now instead of Bitcoin, and it's what you believe in, but you're not going to, people say put your money where your mouth is, but I don't see any good reason to do that. If you want to talk about something that you believe in and then invest with the, acceptance that what you believe in might not come to fruition, I don't see any issue with that. Is that part of how you think about, you know, the difference between investing versus the way that you kind of live your life and the things that you support?
Yeah, and anybody that gives you investment advice of put all your eggs in one investment basket is someone you should not listen to. And it's really interesting seeing Adam Back, the founder of Blockstream, one of the guys that really helped choke Bitcoin's adoption around the world, multiple times on social media say, why don't you sell all your Bitcoin? Why don't you put all your money in Bcash, right? And just like, it's just shocking to me that anybody would take somebody like that serious. And that's some of the worst investment advice you can possibly give. Like, how can anybody be dumb enough to take that sort of argument serious? So I have lots of Bitcoin, lots of Ethereum, lots of Ripple, lots of, basically all the top 10 coins, and then a lot of coins farther down the market cap list there as well. So, and then I have stuff outside of cryptocurrency. Like, never, ever, ever put all your money in one investment basket. That's like one of the stupidest things you can do as an investor. And then telling other people to do that, that's just plain bad advice as well. So my investment advice of the day is have a diverse portfolio. And don't just own cryptocurrency. And if you're going to own some cryptocurrency, don't own just one.
Great. So I know we're coming up on the scheduled time here, and this feels like it was part one of, I could talk about this stuff all day with you. So maybe we can do a part two at some point in the future. But to close this conversation out, would like to ask you, you made a lot of money on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin related investments that you made, and the crypto universe as a whole, I'm assuming. I won't put you on the spot for how much, but I think it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars that you're worth. So you're not, you don't have to be working, you don't have to be hustling and trying to spread the message, and you don't have to be working at all. You're rich enough to live the rest of your life very comfortably and do whatever you want. So my question, obviously you want to make the world a better place and help alleviate poverty, but on a more personal and emotional level, what drives you to keep chugging away, keep working like you do? Deep, like at the core, why are you doing what you do?
Yeah, because I'm living in this world with everybody else, and I want to make it a better world for me to live in. So it's actually mainly out of selfish reasons, because I'm living in the world, and I want this world to be the most amazing, interesting, exciting, fantastic world it possibly can be. And in order to do that, it makes the world a better, fantastic, more interesting, amazing place for everybody else too. So it's a win-win for everybody all over the world. And I think that's the same thing that motivates most of these big entrepreneurs. They keep going because they want to live in a better world themselves. And Elon Musk can retire anytime he wants, yet he's busy building away because he wants to live in a better world too. And that's the same motivation I have. I want to live in a better world, and the best way to make the world a better place is to go out there and do it right. My father told me, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. And to some extent, that's true. I don't know if you have to do everything yourself, but you at least have to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, there's a famous saying, the best entrepreneurs just build something that they couldn't buy, basically. And it sounds like that's a part of the motivation for you as well. I want to give you the last word here before I do so, and just to share like where people can follow you and what they can go to do to learn more about you and Bitcoin Cash and everything like that. Before doing that, I just want to, thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. And it was awesome hearing your perspective on a number of topics, and looking forward to following what you're doing next.
Yeah, my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity. And I guess one extra, little short side story in regards to that too. Like, a lot of people probably don't realize this. After I had my run-in with the law and my time in prison, I did not want to have any public profile whatsoever. I didn't want any attention at all, because I was terrified. I was terrified of the United States government. They'd already treated me so horribly once. If I continued to speak out against them, they would likely treat me horribly again in the future. And that's probably true. But I've been donating money every single month for years before the invention of Bitcoin to spread libertarian ideas to various people around the world. And I told the people in the groups that I was donating that money to each month, I told them, don't mention my name. Don't say the money's coming from me. Don't say anything about that at all, because I don't want to be known as any of the source for that. And then now that Bitcoin, and when Bitcoin came along, it was too exciting where I couldn't help but promote it directly full time. But at some point in the future, I would love to have my private life back and not be occasionally, even recognized on the street or in a restaurant. It's kind of scary and unnerving. And so, Naval Ravikant has it right. He said it's much, much better to be rich and anonymous than rich and famous. And I would love to have my private life back. But where can you follow me or my work, I suppose? Bitcoin.com is where most of my work and effort is at the moment. You can also see a little bit more about me and my various investments at rogerveer.com. And I have a Twitter account. It's Roger K. Veer. And so if you start following me on any social media, though, you'll be guaranteed to get fake Roger accounts contacting you, asking you to invest in whatever, this or that. Don't believe them. Don't send them your money. Watch out for these scamming people out there that try to trick you into sending your cryptocurrency to strangers on the internet. So don't believe them and watch out for that. And thank you again for today, Jake. I had a very nice time.